That was beautiful, Ruben. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the folks who helped put together our services. There is so much work done behind the scenes, and the staff and our beloved volunteers, like I have Kathy Bradshaw with me today, and some of you recorded parts for the service. So I just want to say thank you. I'm Reverend Denise Cawley. I'm the Assistant Minister of Pastoral Care here, and I use the pronouns she and her. I want to welcome you today. Sometimes I have events called Tea with Reverend D, and a lot of you have asked about covenant, and you've had vast questions. And I started talking about those about 2 weeks ago when we talked more about covenant. And Reverend Suzelle really wanted us to focus this month on what does it mean to actually be UU, to be a Unitarian Universalist. And I knew I could spend some time answering your questions and hopefully tickling your curiosity by talking about being UU in covenant, what it means to make covenants by practicing covenants. And I want to honor that we feel pretty weary around my house these days. We're wanting to go and do things, and then we go and it's just not the same, and it feels weird to be masked, or the event is just so stepped back from what I might have expected. It leaves my heart a little heavy. And I'm worried about sending my son back to school, and I know some of you are too. What is it going to be like? Will they keep their masks on? You know, how is Delta going to affect us? And there's so many big, heavy worries right now. It's big. And so at a time like this, I keep returning to my faith, to Unitarian Universalism, and how my heart and the hearts of all of you are a deep soul-centered place that I can return to and hang on to in these times. And these times, my goodness, we have seen so much heartache in Haiti and Afghanistan this week. We have our anxieties about COVID, and the world continues to cry out for us to not just be in agreement that there are injustices, or agreement that we should do something, but to actually work on changing our hearts, reshaping what is going on in here and in here so that we can respond appropriately with cultural competence. And that's what today's service is about. So often we think that agreeing is being nice. It's a common phrase we hear. And a lot of you have gone to trainings and learned that the world needs more than being nice, that cultural change is a lot harder and deeper, and it's ongoing. So if you feel like I did that class, I know, folks, we got to be here together to keep the work going. Now, our board and Reverend Suzelle are going to be introducing Widening the Circle as a community read this fall. And I know some of you have already read it. And I just want you to know, I think I've read it 10 times and I'm still reading it. I'm still going back and studying. So if you didn't get it, or if you start it and you're like, I don't know about this, give it a chance. I'm going to talk specifically today about how that relates to covenant. And covenant is the cornerstone, the foundation, the basis of Unitarian Universalism. It's really special. It is so special. Not all faiths have this. So I'd like you to feel some pride because it's cool. It's really cool. For all of you joining us, whether you're new or whether you've been here for years, I want to say, whomever you love, however you define family, you are welcome. the identities you hold and how you want to be called, and the pronouns you choose are respected and welcome here. Whatever the color of your skin, the languages your grandparents spoke, the cultures that move in your being, the abilities and disabilities you hold, we welcome you. Whatever you believe, whatever your theology, prayer, or sacrament, even if none at all, we welcome you. We unite in Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, many communities. We are spiritual seekers acting out our faith in justice, united in covenant and the spirit of love. We welcome all of you. Welcome to our service of love. Now it is time to light our chalice.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, a sacred vessel made from earthly clay. It is filled with the mind's fire, the heart's warmth, and the spirit's spark. As we light our chalice this day, we illuminate anew the world we are called to serve with justice and compassion.
Hi, folks. Today, I want to share one of my favorite stories. Does this look familiar to anyone? This is from Room on the Broom. It's a book by Julia Donaldson and Axel Schiffner. Now, you may have seen this picture before. This book has been made into different curriculums and movies and all kinds of stuff. If you go out on the interwebs, you can watch a YouTube video of it. But Room on the Broom really symbolizes for me what we're doing today. Now, it stars this fabulous witch and her cat. And this witch had a cat, and the cat was usually black with long ginger hair. And she wore a black hat, that witch she did. And how the cat purred and how the witch grinned as they sat on the broomstick and flew through the wind. But how the witch wailed and how the cat spat when the wind blew so wildly it blew off the witch's hat. Down, cried the witch. They flew to the ground. They searched for the hat, but no hat could be found. And then out of the bushes, was thundering paws. They bounded and saw there was a dog with the hat in his jaws. Now, what I love about this story is that everybody who joins them has a gift. Maybe it's a gift for finding things, it's something they bring. And you see, this dog in particular, he dropped the hat very politely. You know, he was eager and he said, "Oh, I'm a dog as keen as can be. Is there room on the broom for a dog like me?" "Yes," cried the witch. The dog clambered on. The witch tapped her broomstick and whoosh, they were gone. Now, I just want to point out that she didn't say, "Well, would you fit here? What do you bring?" No, the witch just grabbed, the notion of having this dog join their broom, and she made room on the broom. And then later they're flying, and the witch has this beautiful little ribbon on the end of her braid. You can see it behind me. And the ribbon flies off, and oh goodness, they're all upset, and they say down, and the broom goes down. And then they're looking and looking for the ribbon, and they search for that bow, and then there was a shriek. A shriek! That means a really loud noise, or almost a scream, and there flapped a green bird. And she had the bow in her beak. She dropped it politely and then bent her head low. You can tell she wants to know, could she join these friends in this way of being and thinking and acting? And the witch tied her braid back on, and then the green creature said, "I am a bird as green as can be. Is there room on the broom for a bird like me?" "Yes," cried the witch. So the bird fluttered on, and the witch tapped the broomstick, and whoosh, they were gone. And then, oh goodness, they had a storm like a lot of the storms we've been having, and they were flying through tons of torrential rain and over fields, and oh goodness, the wind got so strong. But the witch and the cat and the dog and the bird, they all held on. They held on so tight because they knew that together they could weather that storm. Over the reeds and rivers they flew. The bird shrieked with glee, and the stormy wind blew. And then the witch clutched onto her bow, but woof, she lost her wand, and she had to go back down in the storm. And they all helped. They all helped look for the wand because they knew it was important. Even if it wasn't important to them, it was important to the witch who was their friend. And then all of a sudden, out from the pond leaped a dripping wet frog. Can you imagine? A dripping wet frog? Ick! I hate picking up frogs. I know some of you like it, though. I'd need you to help me. And there came the frog, and he had the wand, and he, of course, dropped it politely. I'm always worried they're going to destroy it, but they don't. They drop it politely. And you know how it goes. "I am a frog as clean as can be. Is there room on the broom for a frog like me?" "Yes," said the witch. So the frog bounded on, and the witch tapped her broomstick, and whoosh, they were gone. And they are flying over all of the mountains and the valleys, like the one that I had on in my picture earlier, and I'll return to in a minute. And you can imagine them flying through the air, just like everything flying off, and they're trying to hang on to it all together. And oh goodness, the broom snapped in two. Well, down fell the cat and the dog and the frog, and they went tumbling into the bog. What are they going to do? I mean, at this point, a lot of us would just go home. We would say, "My car is broke and I can't get to church, and goodness, my computer isn't working. How will I tune in? We'd just give up and go on and do something else. But this crowd, they figured they were better together. And so they went down and they tried to figure out what to do. But then all of a sudden, a dragon shows up, a fire-breathing dragon. You know what happens. I am a dragon as mean as can be, he says. And the witch with French fries tastes delicious to me. No, cried the witch, flying higher and higher on her half a broomstick. Well, the dragon flew after her, and he kept breathing fire. And the witch cried out, what would you say? Help! Help! Well, the witch cried out help, and she looked all around, but no help could be found, and the dragon got nearer, and with a glint in his eyes, you knew he was looking for his ketchup, I think. He said, well, I'll have a witch without fries. But just as he planned his feast, out from the ditch rose a rumble and a horrible beast. Its tail was dark, it had 4 frightful heads, and when it started to speak, there was a yowl and a growl and a croak and a shriek. It dripped and it squelched and it strode from the ditch, and it was big and it's scary, and it said, buzz off! That's my witch! The dragon drew back. He started to shake. I'm sorry, he sputtered. I made a mistake. It's nice to have met you, but now I must fly. And he spread his wings, and he was off through the sky. And down flew the bird, and down jumped the frog, and down climbed the cat, and pew, said the dog. Thank you, oh, thank you, the great witch cried. Without you, I'd be on that dragon's inside. And then she filled up her cauldron and said with a grin, I'll find something, everyone, and throw something in. And so the frog found a lily, and the cat found a cone, and the bird found a twig, and the dog found a bone. And they threw it all in, and they created a spell, and the witch said, Iggity ziggity zaggity zoom. And then out rose a truly magnificent broom with seats for the witch and the cat and the dog and the bird and a pool for the frog. Well, this part is really important because they made all different seating even so that everyone felt welcome. I mean, that bird got a nest, and the frog got a nice wet, cozy space that he needed to splash around in. It even had a little shower head to keep him wet during services, perhaps. And you know, maybe the dog and cat were in need of some help. Maybe they were disabled or just feeling a bit rickety, and they got chairs on the broom with arms. How great is that? Well, yes, said the witch, there is room for all of us, and they all clambered on, and the witch tapped her broomstick, and whoosh, they were gone.
Still questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in a beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Ah, friends, it's time for a moment of meditation. I'm going to share a piece that I love by Adrienne Marie Brown. Now, she's one of the ones I read and listen to pretty often. I was going to lead you in a meditation I wrote, but I felt like this speaks to my heart today, and I thought it might help you too. Adrienne Marie Brown says, if love were the central practice of a new generation of organizers and spiritual leaders, it would have a massive impact on what was considered organizing. If the goal was to increase love, feel that in your hearts, rather than winning or dominating a constant opponent, I think we could actually imagine liberation from constant oppression. We would suddenly be seeing everything we do, everyone we meet, not through our tactile eyes of war, but through love. We would see that there's no such thing as a blank canvas, an empty land, or a new idea, but everywhere there is complex, ancient, fertile ground full of potential. We would organize with the perspective that there is wisdom and experience and amazing stories in the communities we love. And instead of starting up new ideas, organizations all the time, everyone thinks they need a new nonprofit to create this. Instead of doing that, or a new project, we would want to listen, to support, to collaborate, to merge and grow through fusion, not competition. We would understand that the strength, like the mountain I drew behind me, the strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships. Think about that. The strength of our movement is in the strength of our relationships, which only could be measured by their depth. And scaling up would mean going deeper, being more vulnerable and more empathetic. Take some deep breaths with me, my friends, or just be here now with us, whatever works for you. You are so loved here. Amen.
Hi. Today I'm going to read an excerpt from Widening the Circle. Education about the covenantal nature of our faith will allow communities to support and nurture one another as the overall U.S. climate becomes more hostile to and disinterested in life of faith. Returning to the practice of honoring covenant is essential in the world in which we find ourselves. The divisions between generations, between economic levels, and between people of different races, ethnicities, abilities, sexual orientations, and gender identities are unprecedented. If we remember that we are a covenantal faith, we have a better chance of surviving the changing perceptions and attitudes about religion and our faith in our nation. Congregations are encouraged to follow these action steps to continue to grow in the covenantal nature of our faith, while also widening the circle of both who we are and welcoming in our relevancy as a faith. Develop congregational covenants tied to mission and goals, and including aspirations for equity, inclusion, and diversity. Spread promising practices around addressing disruptive people and microaggressions as a barrier to covenantal community. Develop resources for training on engagement with rather than avoidance of conflict as a part of change and transformation. Our faith traditions as Unitarian Universalists require us to address equity and inclusion and diversity issues. Faith and covenant are not dirty words. If freedom and individualism are our most important values, then we have little to offer in these times. The world as we are now living requires a liberatory faith that invites us each into the spiritual work of empathy and healing. Justice making is not a substitute for coherent theology, and faithful justice making requires a liberatory theology. It is that common theology we value that drives the work of justice. Too many Unitarian Universalists do not know what saving and liberatory truths can be found within our faith tradition. We need to put greater emphasis on and what it means to be bound to one another as an interdependent web and in keeping with our covenantal tradition. A greater emphasis on the theological basis for our work for diversity, equity, and inclusion will help us make decisions about the covenants we write, how our bylaws and procedures are executed, what forms of this work are most appropriate for our congregations, committees, groups, and boards, as well as our individual and shared faith lives. Widening the Circle is a guide for our covenants as well as our covenantal faith to grow the relevancy of our faith tradition.
Thank you, Ruben. You may recall that 2 weeks ago when I was showing you the illustration of the box that opened, I was illustrating that our covenant as Unitarian Universalists is not closed. That means that the ways we describe Unitarian Universalism are constantly changing. New theologies or ways of describing God and the universe are constantly being added to and described. We belong to a very exciting pluralistic faith. The funny thing is that for those of us who have been in a faith prior to being Unitarian Universalists, like me, we're really used to learning a few facts and repeating those over and over. A few phrases or sayings or prayers we memorized. Often when we come from those faiths, we can think of our approach to Unitarian Universalism the same way. We think we can, but we cannot. We cannot memorize the highlights of a humanist manifesto or the top Buddhist lessons or the best pagan holidays, and then we will be set. That is not how it works. Our faith has sometimes gotten confusing when folks who thought we were all about truth and reason are confronted with what the interdependent web really looks like, and that we have to learn to use our covenants to really embrace many ways of loving. It's really difficult. This Unitarian Universalism asks us to keep reading, to keep doing meditations and classes and going to small group ministry series. It begs us to keep learning and opening our hearts. A few weeks ago, lots of you were very excited. It was very fun in the chat to watch people adding your list of favorite books and poets that go inside of informing how you make your Unitarian Universalism into what it needs to be for you. You had all your favorite experts that you go to, and the list was grand and wonderful. I showed you how our covenant is open. Hi, I'm Reverend Denise, and this is Reverend Matt, and he's going to help me out today with an explanation about how covenant works. So remember a couple weeks ago we talked to you about covenant not being sealed? Well, here we are with our overflowing box that we can draw from to write our covenants. But a lot of people, and frankly even me, have asked, is there just one perfect covenant? Just give me that one, I'll check the boxes, I'll be set.
Sorry, doesn't quite work like that. Our faith is always being added to as we learn more about anti-racism, decentering whiteness, being more equitable to LGBTQ folks, making our congregations welcoming to people of all incomes and classes, and so much more.
We are always adding to the covenant. A lot of people come to a UU church and think, this is amazing, I'm set, this is what I believe. But the thing they sometimes miss is that with our covenant not being sealed and us being good heretics, we are always adding and learning. Yes. And so we're always working to making ourselves more and more open. We're widening the covenant. We're widening the circle.
All right. Covenant can be a written agreement among individual community members promising to behave in certain ways, and it can mean what we promise to one another.
Yes. So covenant, a number of people have said to me, well, as long as I make that covenant for the meeting or while I'm at church, I'm good, right? I don't have to do that anywhere else. Is that how it works, Reverend Matt?
No,
No,
no.
no. It's how we show up in the world. And so studying and acting on different recommendations, including those from our new favorite book, Widening the Circle. Yeah, studying this, making it part of everyone's vocabulary, and of course, my favorite. What do you like from this book?
Oh my gosh, it's so thick. I mean, you have to, I like that you need to dig into it and talk to people and work through it with people. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, I tried reading this book straight through the first time, and it's too dense. We need to break it down and talk it through and talk about what it means. So we are always adding to our covenant, and this is how we act out our faith and make it wider. So much like how Room on the Broom asks us to keep making room for more, we are now asked to make room in our theologies for people from other cultures, people who do not look like us, to have room on our broom, or in our Zoom room, or in our sanctuary, or at the picnic. Now, in many ways, we've always been working at this, and maybe you too have noticed, especially because Reverend Suzelle and this church have been leaders in this, that we have been trying really hard to do this with greater intensity, with not just good intention, but with incredible outcomes. And so we continue to dedicate ourselves to doing this work. Now, it sounds so easy to be like the witch in the story and say with great enthusiasm, yes, yes, there is room for you. Did you notice how each character dropped something? Why didn't anyone say, ugh, if only the cat wasn't here, or if the bird wasn't here, we wouldn't be losing things? No, instead they just all helped each other feel whole. They helped gather up what others said was important to them. They kept rearranging it and making room. Now, you'll frequently find me on Facebook. Most of the Unitarian Universalist minister resources are brought there first in our discussion rooms that are private. And I like to be in those conversations with my colleagues. I miss them so much during COVID. And I have noticed that when I post things that I might share from one of those groups about women or LGBTQ people or Black or Brown or Indigenous folks on Facebook to my own page, in relationship to our faith, I sometimes get responses from our beloved UUCW congregants to either deny that this is the case or who want to jump on and fix it. And I just want to say I understand both. I believe we cannot fix anything that we do not understand. So today I seek to have you acknowledge that our beloved Unitarian Universalism and how we have executed it is not perfect. We are not wildly superior. We are a faith made up of people, and people make mistakes. I will give you that we as Unitarian Universalists are often first at seeing a situation that is grave in our world, and we are often first in line to fix or help or support a path of justice. I gotta tell you, I love that about us. I love it. It's one of the reasons I'm here and I'm called to be a minister. I also want you to join me hand in hand in admitting that we have not done everything right, even if we have often been first. How could we ever be perfect the first time out? No one can. Anyone who has ever baked knows that they get better with each pie or cake they make. They know that a meal a child makes is admirable effort, but the meal they practice and serve 10 years later is going to be even better. This doesn't make us bad. This is not about guilt. Please, please don't bring guilt into it. Instead, bring fire. The fire of commitment isn't just a line in a song. It is about lighting a fire underneath you to make this world better. I wish our faith was enough to rise above all the stakes of our society, and it is a guide. I think it's a great manual for how to live our values and act out our faith. You know, my beloved hero, Florence Buck, was always talking about acting out our faith in justice, and you'll hear me say it a lot. And I am fully aware that we have made some really grave mistakes. If you look at the timelines of Black ministers and Black congregants trying to join our faith, we have made some grave mistakes. And the same with our Indigenous friends, our people of color, and our LGBTQ people. I know, and women, I want to point that out too, as well as things about class and income and how we are inclusive. We have made some grave mistakes. We're trying, but this is the beauty of being a covenantal faith. Our covenant lets us call one another back into covenant. So I can say, hi, I'm feeling an ouch. I feel sad about this. Could we try to do better? How would we apply our Unitarian Universalist values to be better at living in covenant? That's what we say to each other. We're constantly saying it. Our covenant is founded in the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism, and at this congregation, we have affirmed the 8th principle. Now, it'll be interesting to see how that's all rewritten with the new committee that's meeting, because every 15 years they have to look at our principles and review them and see if they're still exactly how they should be. But because we are called to deal with disagreements constructively and communicate with each other in a direct, caring, and respectful manner, we get to keep calling one another back into covenant. It's the coolest thing about being a Unitarian Universalist. I mean, isn't it great? Sincerely. First off, when you feel guilt or upset that we as a faith have messed up, the first thing you can do is help us build a community of appreciation. Did she just say appreciation? Yes, I did just say appreciation. Did you know that appreciation is a direct act to fight racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and homophobia? Truly. This is a tool we all have right now. You can do it in your families and in your workplaces. We can express gratitude and support to all who volunteer their time and talents and share their resources with this church. We could say to one another, what works well here? Who is working hard? Who made things go smoother? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Notice all the wonderful. Write notes, send texts, write emails, send cards, make a quiche, love them up. Whatever it is that you can do to say, I want to create a culture of appreciation, a culture of help. Did you know that you can lovingly call one another back into the circle of covenant when necessary? It's how we live out our values within the church and throughout our wider communities. This is how we bring our best to one another. Now, I know some of you might be doubting me or you might be dubious. Unitarian Universalists do not do those things, you might say. We don't do anything that's hurtful. Sigh. I wish that were true. I wish we were somehow not humans capable of failure and hurt and harm, but we live in this world, in this society, and we are of it. When I was wrestling with my call to ministry, I was told you have to have your faith break your heart 7 times and then choose to come back to it before you could affirm your call. I'm sure 7 is a random number, but I can assure you my faith has been broken in my heart dozens of times, and I keep coming back to my call to be a part of Unitarian Universalism and this ministry over and over. We are not perfect. Affirm this path anyway. Now, it brings up for me a story of when my wife, she's now my ex-wife, but we are still very good parents, and we work hard at parenting our son. Anyway, when she and I were not being understood by our then church community about the struggles we were dealing with as same-gender parents, and we were wondering what was enough heartache to qualify to be a part of that community, people wanted to be supportive. They didn't realize that they were assuming we had joint health insurance. They assumed we could easily enter a hospital to care for our ill baby without being questioned with the same line of inquiry they give when kidnapping is suspected, or when they were assuming those things, they were indeed erasing or minimizing our experience of being same-gender moms. We hoped to be understood at our church, but we often found ourselves feeling like a display for people to come look at. Look, we have that lesbian or that queer couple over there, rather than us feeling like we were integrated in with the community. That was a Unitarian Universalist church. Everyone was doing their best. Their intention was good, but the outcome wasn't happening for us. Because of those experiences, I wasn't surprised when I went to seminary and I learned how many of our Black seminarians and ministers never found pulpits and never were given the respect and salary they needed to support themselves. And in fact, every marginalized group has stories like that. You may think that's all over. Sadly, it's not. We're working at it. We know that our women rarely are the heads of the very largest pulpits in our denomination, even though, again, we're making strides, and you here are at a wonderful church that has made amazing strides in that department. Same with our queer and our poor and our people of color, and all of us and all our marginalizations sometimes struggle here. But we are looking at widening the circle to continue to do better. And I'd rather be with a people that are continuing to work hard to do better than people who think that they are perfect. I learned that we were the first to ordain a transgender minister, but we have yet to give someone transgender a larger pulpit. None of our transgender ministers are serving in really large congregations. Most serve in congregations of 150 or less. I learned that while we have a majority of women ministers, our larger congregations are still headed by men as the senior ministers. And it is rarer still for a larger congregation to be led by a queer person or a person of color. A couple are, but it's not the dominant story. We're getting there. We're making strides. Now, this realization has led to the Transitions Office of the UUA to host beyond categorical thinking seminars for a couple of decades to really encourage congregations to have people of color and queer and marginalized ministers lead their congregations. And as many of you know, I represent lots of those intersections of marginalizations, and I'm your assistant minister of pastoral care. What a delight. Hopefully, in more decades to come, this will become the way of the future where it's just common. And once they do lead, how do we support them? We are all trained in a way of thinking that favors binary thinking. That's just our culture that we live in. It's not that we are bad. That has often built our bylaws and our procedures and our budgets and our way of thinking and being. They are all built on a binary, an either or way of thinking, or they are built on scarcity oftentimes. Often folks think we need to pick the sure thing, what is reliable or familiar. Next time we'll pick the other person. What does this do when people visit our congregations? Do they visit and then not see themselves and so they leave? Widening the Circle is our congregational read this year. It speaks to many of these issues, and we will be hosting sessions to help you digest the information. Now, at this point, you might say, well, how's that going to help me in my own life? And I guarantee you it will, because you are each beacons of light everywhere you go. All of these topics apply to your families and your neighborhoods and your schools and your workplaces and your extended families. I'll give you a content warning. It's not all great news in the book. It does tell us that we have to do better. And it also tells us why, and it gives us hope. Covenant and commitment, not comfort, should be the binding fabrics of UU congregations and other communities. Our faith communities are not just available for those who fit in more easily, or the ones who make so much trouble no one is willing to challenge them. New generations have even more discomfort with and lack of tolerance for this sort of culture. It's considered toxic, and I know we want new generations in our congregations. Covenant calls us to hold urgent and dear Unitarian Universalism's aspirations to building the beloved community with diversity, inclusion, equity, compassion, justice, and an acknowledgement for our interdependence with other forms of life, with our planet, with other countries, with other people. We have bound ourselves together in faithful discernment. Discernment is what we're going to do with this read this fall. It's not just by structure, but in learning and living together. I tell you, nothing is more fun than learning and doing something together. I remember when I served Bradford Unitarian Universalist Church, one of the stories they told all the time was when they were able to claim their church building again. It had been Unitarian Universalist and then it had changed for decades. And when they got it back, everyone would talk about the hard work they did to convert the church back to being a church. They talked about sledgehammers and sweeping and raking. Together doing work is how we experience transformation and liberation. It's actually fun. We are called to travel this path together because together we are more than the sum of its parts. We are asked to prioritize workshops on covenant and right relations and curate models of covenants for congregations and communities of different sizes and different demographic profiles. Cool news, we are sponsoring those this fall. Sign up. I love talking about this book. Ask me, send me an email. That's a personal invitation. You know what else? This book can overwhelm me, and I read it in little bits. I love taking one section and talking it over, and so if you are struggling, let me know. And let Reverend Suzelle know and the board know. They've all read it too. And that brilliant author who I quoted, who I read in our meditation today, Adrienne Marie Brown, in her Emergent Strategy says, whatever future we have articulated that we want to create, we have to practice it in as many aspects of our current life and work as possible. This is what brings our vision to life. So I am inviting you to a magic formula. I'm inviting you to a transformational experience that we have to practice it in as many aspects of our current life and work as possible to bring our vision to life. Brown consistently refers to the concept of fractals in her work, offering us a reminder that the larger world we experience is made up of tiny parts. You and I are one of those parts, and they all contain the same pattern that we see in ever-increasing scale. If you look, Scientific American this month is focusing on fractals. The world under a microscope looks the same as the heavens throughout the telescope. The rivers on our planet, when photographed from above, contain the same patterns as we find branching out through the veins of a leaf or the veins within our bodies. The largest pattern in nature are nothing more than the smallest patterns in nature amplified. Now, I keep reading and listening to Adrienne Marie Brown and returning to Widening the Circle. And now we are welcoming you to join me, to join all of us in struggling with how to implement this. How do we continue to welcome people like me, people who come from so many different marginalized identities different than mine? How do we welcome congregants from so many different identities? I know for me, this book is one way. You know what's awesome about this book? It helps us reaffirm that we must lead from covenant, a covenant of care. If you look at our community connections group, they are going to be sharing more ways that you can participate in that community of care. Just like our lay pastoral team and so many of the groups you're being invited to sign up for, whether it's the writing group or another similar project. Yes, this is going to give us new language and new phrases to determine what is essential about being you. What should be in our covenants. Don't be afraid. You are so good at learning. I have sat in your meetings over and over, and I find myself saying to myself, what a brilliant response. What a kind thing to say. What a logical way to react. I know I walk away going, I love these people. Let's move together into loving more people, loving them more. How do we incorporate these principles of covenant into our anti-racism work across all UU organizations? How do we love up more folks? With these steps: read Widening the Circle, take notes, ask questions, form study groups, get a study buddy. I can't stress this enough. I'm here for you. Reverend Suzelle, the board. Soon Dave will be announcing study opportunities. Our board has selected this and wants us to engage in this work. I'm so proud of them and delighted by their decision. Next, let's look at our mission. Our mission should then be supported by our covenants. There is direction in Widening the Circle that asks us, is this missional work? Do the bylaws and procedures support this? Hooray, we already have a group working on this. They announced it in one of the last newsletters. Go back and read the newsletters if you didn't click for the more. We could read things and say, does this take into account how a Black person, a queer person, a transgender, or poor person would receive this? Are we bringing unintentional bias to our policies? Don't stop at guilt. Push that aside. This sermon is not to give you guilt. I am here to cheer you on. Our faith is so special. So few faiths have the opportunity to move the world, to change how we interact, to grow, to admit imperfection, and to strive to be the best we can be. I want you to own that we have not all done everything right. We have dozens of Black ministers and queer ministers and trans and poor and disabled ministers and congregants who have all missed out on joining this amazing faith because maybe our intention didn't match the impact. Well, I hate that we have missed and lost so many people from being a part of the coolest faith going. And I know you do too. But we are doing this work so that we can make meaningful action enough to keep ourselves open to widening the covenant. Ask yourselves, if I live in a society that was built on being unfair to so many people, How can I, in my own church, in my family and friends, do something to actually reflect the world I want? I can do it. I can study this book. If I can read it before, I will read it again with an accountability buddy. If I am asked to be on a committee for bylaws or procedures or for covenant or for addressing that, I will make it a priority because I want my heart changed. I want to side with love. I want to make changes to my world to the ones that I have always wanted to live in. I trust you, dear ones. I have seen so much health here in this congregation. I have seen you respond with logic and care and wisdom. So let's hold hands after sanitizing them and while we wear masks. But let's do it together. I am here for you. Won't you join me?
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of
UUC Church West Split the Plate program is one of outreach and of generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and to serve our greater community. Our Split the Plate partner for mid-July through the end of August is the Gathering of Southeastern Wisconsin. The Gathering is a community of guests and of staff and of volunteers united by the common goal, which is to feed the hungry in mind, in body, and in spirit. At the gathering, volunteers provide 10 to 11 free meals each week, cooked on site at 4 different Milwaukee locations, to those who would otherwise go hungry. The gathering also offers services associated with ending hunger and homelessness and works to educate our greater community on hunger issues. They have continued their service throughout the COVID-19 pandemic by providing carry-out meal service and will continue to serve carry-out meals to the hungry until it is safe again to serve meals indoors. To support the gathering for the next 7 weeks, please go to the UUCW website's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu provided. Or you can text or you can email your donation today using the information found here. Today, I thank you for your generosity to the gathering.
Thank you all. Today, I ask you to step into what many of us consider a new era of Unitarian Universalism. Help us build a congregational polity that serves us rather than blocks progress. Join all of us in creating covenantal understandings among all affiliated Unitarian Universalists about the need for equality, inclusion, and diversity initiatives. Join us in this work to refocus resources we have on critical areas of leadership that lead to a more inclusive and more equitable practices. We indeed are capable. We are capable of being leaders we dream of being. We can do this hard work to lead our faith, our association, our congregation, and even our families and ourselves into the kind of place that will always make room on the broom for more and more folks, more help, and more ways of being. Blessed be, Ashe, and may it be so.
Thank you. That was wonderful. The final words I have today are by Eric Williams. May you be filled with the blessings of this covenanted community. May you carry them with you as you depart from here. May you discover the places in the world where these blessings are needed. May you have the courage to share them. May there be an open place within you to receive the blessings of all the people whom you will meet along the way. Thank you.